Hey, I'm Mikko. I'm a professional artist and I don't believe in art blocks. Before you click away, hear me out. Last year, while I was teaching a full concept art course and doing content for this channel and working for my clients, I was so burnt out that I didn't know how to make art for myself in between all of that work. So this year, when I was doing the art course again, I found a way through and I created something that I call art snacks, and honestly for me it changed everything. The name comes from me just liking carbs mostly, and I wanna attach art into something positive. These were short, fun sessions, just built around the limitations that I have in my life. In this video, I wanna give you the tools of understanding what so-called creative blocks are and how you can create a sustainable creative practice that is built around your life and not hitting some kind of imaginary quota. These art snack sessions are what you're going to be seeing throughout this video, so that's why there are so many different art processes in this one. Even if you started this year with an intense art practice and elaborate goals on what you wanna achieve, I'm sure at some point you are gonna get sick, life is gonna happen, and how you can keep enjoying art when those things happen. It's better to have a plan for that rather than watch it all fall apart and then feel powerless about it. For many of us, art starts as a hobby. It's something we do in our free time, and that's great. For example, for me, when I was in school, I didn't think of art even as one of the subjects I was studying. It was just this fun break between classes, and I often made drawings during break or at home on top of all the normal homework, because it was just fun. And when we're adults, it's much harder to keep that same relationship with your creative work. The problem comes more apparent when we try to take art more seriously. Someone wanting to improve their technical skills or even intending to make art their full-time job. They will run into this immediately. Suddenly, what was previously just a fun hobby becomes really overwhelming, and you are compared to all these great artists that are just doing everything better than you. And anybody who has been in the situation where they are building their skills for work feels this pressure at some point. The competition is intimidating. So why does art turn into this energy-consuming thing when we put more effort into it? When we make art, it's easy to fall into the flow state. There's a part of your brain that is actively keeping track of time. When nothing is happening, it's pretty easy to estimate 2 minutes going by without a watch. During flow state, this function of our brain doesn't serve us, so it completely shuts down. If you're in a very deep flow state, you don't realize that you started painting in the morning and suddenly the sun has gone down. The deeper the flow state, the less you realize time is going by. Art isn't just about manual skills. It's thousands of micro decisions in every single session. And decisions, even fun ones, drain mental energy. No one really talks about that, but it's why you can feel exhausted after just 2 hours of painting. You can also compare this to any other life situation where you're making tons of important decisions in a short amount of time. All of those feel exhausting because choices are work. But with art, there's no general awareness on this, and because of that, it can easily feel like you don't have the right to be tired after painting for 2 hours. We artists treat fatigue like it should be something that we are ashamed of, like we're privileged and lucky to make art, and we are, but because of that reason, we shouldn't complain when the work that is our passion is also costing us energy and draining us. I think it's better that I explain this through my own experience. I love painting during live streams and chatting with you about art. That's like one of my favorite things to do in the world. I really do feel that way. But what you don't see in those sessions is what happens after. Me peeling myself from this chair like an empty husk of a human being, just trying to revive myself back to life. I literally have to water myself like I'm a withered plant because I'm so dehydrated, and I tell everybody that I can't talk anymore. I've been talking for 3 hours. I need to just like exist before I can be normal again. And I've done this enough to know that happens because I've made so many decisions in a high pressure setting. And the high pressure setting is me making those decisions on a painting because I care about my paintings and I want them to be good. Also, when people are watching, that even adds more weight to those decisions. That is what is causing that fatigue after the live stream is over. But for beginners, just drawing alone with a piece of paper is a high pressure situation. You have to overcome all your inner fears telling you you're not good enough. They tell you your art isn't original, it's cringe, or that you're pretentious for going with that idea. And I know that I'm not talking just about myself here. Everyone goes through those imposter syndrome battles when they are making art that is worth making. If art makes you feel those fears, then you know that art is important, and that is exactly the kind of art that you need to fight for. That is when you need that energy the most to battle through those fears and make art that is important. And I don't want this to be bleak, so yes, you do build endurance for it through practice, but that energy expenditure will still be there, and you feel it every time. At least I do. So what I'm saying here is, it is tough. You are allowed to be tired, and it is not a weakness to take a rest when you need it. You notice this when you are making videos for YouTube, but art learning is also just full of toxic hustle culture. And it's really difficult to notice this when you need this information, and it's not just videos. So much of even professional art teaching used to come down to teachers just telling us students that you have to work really hard, and if your art sucks, it's your fault for not working hard enough or taking too many breaks. I hope as a culture we've grown past that phase during the last 25 years, but I can still definitely feel the impact of that culture still affecting us today. That type of art teaching burdened entire generations before me, and I can tell that I feel sometimes guilt when I'm not doing things, just because of the way that art was taught to me. In all of the art schools, hobby groups, and art courses I've attended in my entire life, not even once has one of the teachers taught us how to replenish your creative energy. So that's why I thought that this is an important video to make. Now I can explain why I don't believe in art blocks and why I think you should stop talking about them as well. Especially if you're over the age of 30, I think we bear a responsibility for younger generations not to give this burden to the younger generation. And we can stop this right now by just changing the culture immediately. I think this overworking and this guilt of taking a break, we are so uncomfortable with the idea that art is work and all work needs rest that we can't just say that we are tired. We feel like we need a better explanation for when we are tired and we don't feel like painting or drawing, or creative ideas don't come to us. Of course they don't. If you have been painting all day, what do you have to paint about? You haven't experienced anything. You haven't read any books, seen any movies, met your friends. You don't have any important life experiences to tell us about through your art. Of course you don't feel like creating anything. So you need those to make art. That is part of the process. And to deal with this guilt that we feel, we have invented this syndrome, almost like a disease, to excuse our need for rest. That we have a creative block, something that is completely out of our hands, and if we can just cure this disease, then we can be normal and overworking again. I think we should just stop using this term creative block or art block, writer's block, what have you, and normalize the idea that all creative people, like in every other profession, we need rest to be able to be in working condition again. And like I said, if you're over the age of 30, I think personally that it's your responsibility to stop putting this way of thinking on the younger creative generation, because this has been handed to us by art teachers and culture that hammers this sort of creative guilt into us, and we can stop it right now. So what's the fix? It's easy to say just take a break, but we all know how hard that is to implement into our lives, and we end up overworking anyway. Ideas are a combination of all the memories and experiences of books and movies and games we have in our brain. Sometimes those ideas collide, and that results in a moment that we call inspiration. Now, personally, I believe that we have no control over when those things happen in our brain. I think it's kind of weird to say that I came up with this idea. The idea came to me. It happened inside my head, but I certainly didn't make it happen. And I want to be clear that I don't think that you need inspiration to start making art. That is very rare, and I certainly don't wait for inspiration to flow through the window before I pick up a brush or pen. And I don't recommend waiting for inspiration to anybody who wants to get better at painting or drawing. But inspiration is beautiful, and it is important to have those experiences every now and then to keep interest to making art alive, because those are the moments where you draw the energy and you feel like you're working for some greater purpose. Of course you need those, but those come from life experiences. That's why we need to have the life beyond art as well. And that's why I think that when I'm out for a walk or just doing something that is non-art related, I think of that as part of the art making process. I don't think that I'm on a vacation when I go out for a walk. For example, if I'm having a visual problem in my painting that I can't seem to solve, I'm just stuck with it. Almost always, just going on for a walk and coming back to the work resolves that issue. I can't get outside of that box if I'm just staring at the same painting here in my workroom and trying to power through the problem without taking a break. It is part of the work itself. When I go away, that is working to me. I also get most of my painting ideas during running, but I understand that running is not everyone's cup of tea, because I used to hate running for 1 year, so I understand that this is not a hobby that I will push to everybody. But it has been proven that just going outside for a walk, especially if you can be in a forest, boosts your creativity. You also might have other things that are specific to you that trigger your creative thinking. It's important to pay attention to those moments when those ideas happen. Where were you? What were you doing at that moment? And how you can add more of that to your life so that you can get more of those experiences and those ideas. Basically, we need to track down our sources of inspiration and what kind of situations, moods, what kind of people we are with when those things happen. And we need to treat those situations like fuel for our creative brain that we need to make those paintings that are meaningful and important to us. Now let's talk about what happens when life gets busy, because that happens to all of us. You land a full-time job and suddenly your creative habit just disappears. You think, why can't I draw like I used to? Don't expect to create like you did in your free time when you were in school and didn't have any other life commitments. Art was basically your job back then. Now I want to make sure that this is clear, even though this is gonna be super awkward to say out loud. Art is my full-time job, and of course I have multiple hours in a day to commit to painting, and that's why you see me posting so much art on social media. I'm saying this because I hope that nobody compares their output to what I do. because I have so much time to put into this. I'm supposed to be productive and make more art than somebody who is working full-time, has children, or a very busy life where art is something that they are just adding on top of that. Of course, I make more art because I put so much time into it, but that means that like you shouldn't compare your output to somebody like me or anybody online who is doing art for a living. It's a completely different level of commitment that maybe you don't even want to have. So don't set yourself standards that are unrealistic to your current life situation. What I or any other artist online does, it shouldn't be your measuring stick for productivity or any other type of progress. Make it sustainable. Start small. Maybe even just 15 minutes of sketching after work or during weekends. Whatever you can fit is a good place to start. Set clear and realistic goals. In that time, you won't be able to complete a fully rendered complex painting with rendered three-dimensional shadows. But with that time, with your skills, what can you do? Do a quick character pose, even if it's just a gestural sketch. Maybe you can pick one object on your desk and draw that. You can do a color study or just a thumbnailing session where you create lots of tiny small paintings that can be ideas for more painting sessions in the future. You can also finish something in that time, but don't set finishing as the only goal you can have for these types of sessions. For example, if you only have 30 minutes but allow yourself to continue the same piece the next day, that's already 1 hour of time with art that you have squeezed into your life, and learning to continue where you left off will suddenly open up all kinds of bigger projects you can do in these small stolen moments. The most important part of this plan is that when you put the brush down, you can walk away from that session with a sense of accomplishment. You can learn to enjoy these small wins. But for them to feel rewarding, you need to have a clearly defined goal you know you can reach in that time. That's why I started these 60-minute art snack sessions. And everything about them is designed around this idea. What I can do in 60 minutes, what can I do to make it enjoyable for myself, and setting out goals that are achievable, so when I stop painting, I can walk away feeling like I did my part. I did some art and I can feel like an artist. I can feel like myself. Because for an artist, that is a really big part of your identity. If you identify as an artist, you don't feel good when you are not completing pieces of art. So that's why these art snack sessions were just exactly what I needed in this moment of life. I want to be clear about this time limit, that I didn't do it as a challenge, but as a way to make painting feel effortless again. The 1 hour time limit wasn't a restriction. It was a permission to stop whenever I wanted, without pressure. I also limited all of the work to square canvas aspect ratios, just to take one more decision away from me. And all of them were done with my pastel pencil brush, so that I don't have to think about what kind of brush I'm using. It's always the same aspect ratio, it's always the same tool. There's freedom in limitations. And honestly, this freedom made me more expressive and creative in ways that I hadn't expected. Some of these paintings are honestly just pretty dumb and silly, and I'm saying that as a good thing. If I was starting a big 30-hour painting and went through all the necessary planning, I probably wouldn't end up with a house on top of a massive bear. Nothing kills your creativity like taking it too seriously. So this was all a massive unexpected benefit that I didn't even realize that I needed. If a time limit like that can make you be a bit more silly, then I recommend that you try it too. Because if you're lacking fun in your art process, then there's something in the process that is not working for you. One aspect of these art sessions is much harder to explain, and that's how loose this whole 1 hour time limit was for me. Sometimes the paintings were done way before 60 minutes, and sometimes I felt like there were plenty of elements that I wanted to fix before publishing it. A tool like this only works when you capitalize on the benefits. So if I felt like working more than 60 minutes, I did. I'm not gonna ask a permission from the art police to do so, because it's my damn painting. The time limit also helped me to get started, and I cannot underline enough how important this is. I knew that if I wanted to stop painting after 60 minutes, I could. So I never felt like I was committing to unreasonable amounts of work. People use this same mechanism of cheating themselves to doing hard things all the time when it comes to fitness. You've probably heard about how effective it is to have a hard rule of working out or running just for 5 minutes. If you really want to quit, you can. But once you're already outside running or at the gym, more often than not, it's easier and more fun to just do the workout and keep going. And the same is true with art. The first 5 minutes can feel very hard sometimes, but after you're already there, after you have some scribbles on the canvas, it's easier to make it look better because it's already a mess. So that's why cheating yourself to starting can be incredibly powerful. Also, as a side benefit, I want to say that if you live with an artist, you might already know that if your partner goes into a flow state, you might lose them for the entire rest of the day. I don't think that those sort of moments make me a better boyfriend for my partners. These 60 minutes also made my time management a lot easier. I could actually plan ahead as I knew I'd be available after the session. I had to look at student work and prepare for the next day's lectures too, so I couldn't be lost in a flow state for a random amount of time. Remember that these paintings were only a tiny piece of my workday, so they had to stay manageable. When I look at the finished paintings, I don't feel like I should have spent more time with them or that I need to go in and clean them up somehow. Not at all. I think this type of texture they have is part of their charm. It comes not only from the pastel pencil brush I used in all of these, but the time limit made me prioritize readability and mood over everything else. And I think at least that type of joy that I felt in making these, I think it comes across in the way that these are painted. If you want to dive deeper and learn how to paint in Procreate, whether it's skies, compositions or architecture, check out my art course on Gumroad. It's packed with everything you need, from brushes, color palettes and step-by-step guides. And if you want more tips and videos on painting, hit subscribe and check out this video on how to simplify your workflow to paint faster. I've been Mikko, you've been you, I think, and I'll see you in the next video. Bye.